Eternal waiting, eternal betrayal. Time loses meaning when you are eternal. Was it 50 years? 100? 200? I could no longer tell you. The decades blurred together like watercolors in rain, each one indistinguishable from the last except for the accumulating weight, the multiplying ghosts, the slow and total understanding that infinity is not a number. It is a punishment. It is the only punishment in the end, of which all the others are merely rehearsals. I had been Michael Reeves once. I keep saying that was, because it is the last fact I am still fighting to keep, and I am losing. The name has nearly finished loosening now. There are whole years when I forget I ever had it, when I am only the function, only the key and the door and the next door and the next. And then something will catch me off guard. A song in a passing car, a child's drawing taped to a refrigerator in a house I have come to empty, and the name will surface for a moment, and I will remember that I was a man, and a husband, and a father of 3, and that I did all of this for love. I want to tell you about my children. I owe them that much. I owe them more than that, but this is what I have left to give. The telling. David went first. He died at 87, in his sleep, after a lifetime spent saving other people from me. 60 years a doctor. 60 years standing between the living and the doors I carried, winning some, losing most, never once knowing that the thing he fought every day had taught him, without meaning to, how to fight it. His door, when it came, was made of stethoscopes and prescription pads and the worn handles of 1,000 examination room cabinets, a monument to a life spent at war with the inevitable. He saw me at the end. They always see me. But he was the first of mine, and I had been waiting 60 years for the sight of him, and I was not ready, and you are never ready. Dad, he said, though I had not been Dad for 6 decades. Hello, David. He looked at me a long moment. You look terrible. Death doesn't age well. All this time. His soul was already loosening, but his eyes held me. You've been here, watching? Every moment, I said, every graduation, every wedding, every birthday your children ever had. I was in the corner of every room. I never missed one. My children. Something crossed his face, the thing that crosses all their faces when they understand. Will you? When their time comes. Yes, I'll be there. That's not comforting. It isn't meant to be, I said, but it's true, and true is the only thing I have left to give anyone. He nodded, the way he'd nodded at 1,000 diagnoses, accepting the data. And then my son, the doctor, walked through his door without looking back. The only one of all the billions I have collected who did not turn for a final glance, because he had spent his whole life refusing to look back, and he was not going to start at the end. Cured at last of life. Emma went at 94. She died surrounded, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, a whole dynasty of voices, because the throat that had closed when her mother got sick had opened again somewhere in the long years without me, and she had filled the world with singers. Her house was loud with them at the end, generation on generation, and she went out on the sound of them. Her door was shaped like a single music note, and it hummed, I swear it hummed, with harmonies I could hear and would never be allowed to join. I knew you'd come, she said. I always come. That's the part that's hardest. Her voice was old now, but it was still hers, still the voice from the cousin's wedding in the 3rd year, the song I had bought with everything. Knowing you were always there and couldn't, I said. Never wouldn't. Always, only, couldn't. She looked at me with her mother's eyes. I forgive you. Don't. Too late. And she smiled, and she walked through her door singing, and the sound of it hung in the air long after the door had closed, and I have it still. I will have it until the universe runs down. It is the only music I own. And then there was Lucy. My baby. She lived to 103, ancient and tiny in a narrow bed, in a room whose every wall was covered in paintings, because she had never stopped, not in 90 years. Portraits, all of them. Portraits of me. You could read the whole story in them if you walked the room in order, and I did while she was dying. The early ones, a father laughing, a father cooking badly, a father alive, painted by a girl trying to keep him real with oil and patience. And then the later ones, painted across decades by a woman who had begun, somehow, to sense the truth. A father growing stranger, colder, less a man and more a shape, the face thinning out of him picture by picture until, on the last canvas, the one still wet on its easel beside her bed, there was no face at all. Just black. A single keyhole painted in the center of all that black, very small, very precise. She had been waiting for me. She had painted the door before I arrived. "I see you now," she said when her soul came free. Her eyes, after 103 years, were perfectly clear. "Really see you. You're not Dad anymore, are you?" "No," I said. "I'm not." "You're just Death, wearing his face." "Even that's fading now," I told her. It was the truth. The face was going the way of the name. Good. She looked at me with the terrible tenderness of the very old, who have forgiven everything because they have outlasted the strength to hold a grudge. He wouldn't want to be remembered like this. Let him go. I'll keep him. She touched the place over her heart, where the memory of a man lived who no longer existed in any other form. I painted the real one. He's safe. Her door was a masterpiece. Of course it was. Painted in every color that has ever existed and several that have not, layered and luminous, a door you wanted to step through just to see what an artist of 103 years could make of the next world. She walked toward it the way she walked into every gallery she ever entered, curious, unafraid, already composing the next thing. And at the threshold she turned and looked back, one last time, the backward glance, and she was not looking at her body or her paintings or the room. She was looking at me, at what was left of me, and then she was gone, and I was the last Reeves standing. Though standing implies a choice, and I had none. Their children had children. Those children had children. I watched the line of them spread out across the centuries like a river finding the sea, each generation knowing the old family story, the ancestor who had made a deal with death, and not one of them knowing that they looked their ancestor in the face every time someone they loved came to the end. I stood at all of it, every wedding, every wake. I opened the doors of people who carried Sarah's eyes and David's stubborn jaw and Lucy's hands down through the years, and they did not know me, and I could not tell them, and that is its own kind of forever. But the children dying was not the worst of it. I want to be honest, here at the end, the way my predecessor was honest with me. The worst of it was the ghosts. By the time I had been at this 100 years, or was it 2, they outnumbered the living. I am not speaking poetically. There were more dead left uncollected in the world than there were breathing people in it. Every city was thick with them. Every old building had its shadows, its cold spots, its echoes of endings that no one had been there to attend. The world grew heavy with them, a kind of spiritual sediment settling over everything, and the living felt it without knowing what they felt. A sourceless heaviness, a grief with no object, an anxiety that became, generation by generation, simply the weather of being alive. They built whole sciences to explain the sadness. None of the sciences knew that the sadness was the weight of 1 billion doors that no one had opened in time. Some of those ghosts were mine. Most of them, by then. Made the way I told you I would make them, not in one great refusal, the way he made his, but a half-second at a time, helplessly, the slow leak of a thing that cannot be in every place at once. But the first of them, the oldest, the founding population of all the haunting in the world, those were his. The exhausted gatekeeper who once sat down and went on strike. I used to resent him for that. I don't anymore. I have been at this long enough now to know that he was not weak. He was simply early. He broke before I did. That is the only difference between us. And it is not a difference of character. It is a difference of mileage. Because I did try. I want that on the record. Unlike him, I did not sit down. When I saw what the ghosts were doing to the world, to the descendants of my own children, walking through their haunted cities under a weight they couldn't name, I tried to fix it. God, how I tried. I split myself into more fragments than I had ever dared, tried to be everywhere at once, tried to circle back and catch every soul I'd missed, tried to empty the world of its terrible sediment one late door at a time. I failed. You cannot bail out the ocean. For every ghost I finally laid to rest, 10 more settled in behind me, because the metronome never slows, and I am only one, however many pieces I break into. I tried for what might have been a century. Then I understood that trying was just a slower way of drowning, and I stopped trying, and I have carried that failure ever since, alongside all the others, in the place where a man used to keep his heart. So now you understand the waiting. I wait. That is what I do now, under all the doors and all the centuries. I waited for David, knowing the year. I waited for Emma and for Lucy and for every Reeves after them, knowing each date before it came. I have waited out empires. I have waited out languages, religions, the slow rearrangement of the very coastlines. And I am waiting still for the one thing that never comes, which is an end. There is no last name on the last page. I told you that, in another life, when I was still new enough to be horrified by it. I am not horrified anymore. I am just waiting, the way a stone waits, the way the dark between stars waits, for nothing, forever. Even my 1 day a year is no reprieve. Every free day I die at midnight, the way every mortal dies. And the universe, which has had centuries now to refine its sense of humor, has never once killed me the same way twice. A bus the first few times. Then a falling piano, which I had genuinely believed was a thing that happened only in cartoons. An earthquake once that swallowed an entire city block, and out of all those thousands of souls took great care to include me. A meteorite, of course, a swarm of bees, a vending machine that toppled at the statistically perfect moment. I have died every absurd death there is on my 1 day a year, and someone has laughed every single time. And every free day, because I am death, I must come and collect myself, stand over my own body and wait for my door, the way I have made a billion others wait for theirs. It never comes. There is no door for me. There never was. I am the threshold, and the threshold does not get to leave. I am poured back into the work before the body is cold. I learned that in my first year, standing over my own corpse on a quiet street. I have relearned it every year since. There is no exit, not up, not down, not even the small mercy of a clean ending once a year. Except, there is one way out. There has always been one way out. I have known it since the night a tired creature with hollow eyes sat at my bedside and offered it to me. Find a soul, a grieving one, a cornered one, a love desperate enough to look at this exact eternity and call it a bargain, and pass it on the way he passed it on to me. That is the only door death is ever shown. But first, the free days had a lesson to finish teaching me, and it took me centuries to let myself learn it. Death cannot die. I can be found by every bus and every meteorite the universe can throw, and at 1 minute past midnight I will open my eyes and pick up the key, because there is no door that will take me and no grave that will keep me. The one mercy granted to every living thing, that it ends, is the one mercy I will never be given. Death cannot die. Say it to yourself a few times in the dark, and feel how the walls come in. So death was no exit. That left the other door, the bedside door, the one I had sworn I would never use. I had been the wound someone pressed. I would not press another. I held to that for a long time, for centuries, while the ghosts thickened and my children's children's children forgot my face. But I told you, near the start of all this, what the burden does. It makes a betrayer of anyone, given enough time. Even a saint, even a doctor's father, even me. And 1 century, I will not tell you which, I am too ashamed to say it out loud. The waiting finally wore through the last thread of my vow, and I went looking, and I found him. A man dying with his wife 3 days in the ground, and 3 children about to be orphaned, so close to the shape of what I once was that I could have wept. I sat at his bedside. I told him the truth, all of it, the way it had once been told to me. And he, God help us both, said yes. It did not work. I felt for the loosening, the first hint of the rest I had watched my own predecessor receive, the weight beginning to lift off me at last. It did not come. I waited. I willed it. Nothing. The key stayed warm in my hand. The metronome went on ticking behind my eyes. To a second. Mine. Still mine. The door that should have opened to release me, the single door in all of creation I had ever been promised, never so much as flickered. And the man who had said yes, the grieving father who had agreed to take my place, did not become death, nor did he pass on to whatever his life had earned. The transfer had caught him halfway and left him there, between, undone. He came loose from his body, and he did not rise, and he did not fall. He simply stayed, one more shadow in one more corner, one more wandering thing reaching for a world that could no longer see it. I had not freed myself. I had only made another ghost, and this one I made the way the first death made his, on purpose, reaching for the exit and finding nothing there but one more soul to ruin. It was standing over that stranded, half-taken man that I finally understood the shape of the thing, the last line of the design, the cruelest one, the one the father never bothered to hide because no one ever lived long enough to read it. The exit was never mine. It had never been mine. It belonged to him, to my predecessor, and to whatever fallen judge came before him, all the way back to the first gatekeeper. Because they were prisoners. Every one of them had broken a law and been sentenced, and a sentence, even an eternal one, is a punishment. And a punishment is a thing the law is always free to end. The successor clause was their parole. It was written into the crime. But I committed no crime. I was not sentenced. I was asked, and I said yes, with my eyes open, for the love of 3 children. I am not a prisoner here. I am a volunteer. And there is no parole from a thing you chose. There is no release from a vow freely made. The door that swings open for the guilty stays shut forever for the one who walked in willingly, because you cannot pardon a man who was never convicted, and you cannot free a man who is standing exactly where he agreed to stand. Do you see it now? Do you see the whole terrible joke at last? The one who broke the rules went free. The one who broke no rule at all, who gave up his eternity out of nothing but love, is the one the universe keeps. The guilty are paroled. Only the innocent are eternal. And still, I want this on the record, the last true thing I own, I would do it again. Not the betrayal. God, not that. I would unmake that century if I could, and give the stranded man his rest. But the taking, the 5 years, the bargain at the bedside that began all of it. Lucy was 9. She would have lost us both at 9. I would walk back into this exact eternity, this hopeless, deathless forever, for those 5 years and that one song in the 3rd year, and I would do it knowing everything I know now. You can be the most trapped thing in all of creation and still be certain you chose right. No one tells you that either. I have had a very long time to learn it. So that is where it ends, which is to say it does not end. Death cannot die, and death cannot leave, and death, this death, the one who was a father, cannot even buy his way out the way the guilty ones did, because this death was never being punished at all. I will open doors until the last name on the last page, to a second, forever, and the page will never come. I was Michael Reeves. I did it for love, and I am still, after everything, after every door and every century and every absurd midnight, looking back, over my shoulder, at a living room, at three faces, at a song still hanging in the air where a music note door once closed. I will be looking back when the stars go out. It is the only direction I have left. End of episode 7, and of Gatekeeper of Heaven and Hell.